Shalom Aleichem, we're learning the Sicha of Vayeishev Gimel. Now, when you learn the Sicha, at least even Ufik, at the first glance, there's no strong Hira of Avodas Hashem. The Rebbe doesn't really lead to Hira of Avodas Hashem. So the question is, when the Rebbe originally said the Sicha, was there any context that he lead into anything? And the answer is yes. The Rebbe asked the questions of the Rashi and spoke about Makam Muchan Shal Per Anus, and then the Rebbe went on to something which was, it's not an exaggeration to say, one of the things that caused the Rebbe the most grief ever, and that is Miu Yehudi. So I just thought, there's no stronger over here, and Miu Yehudi's back on the news, as the Rebbe hopefully. We wish that they finally solved at least parts of the Mir Yehudi debacle. Fundamentally, the Mir Yehudi debacle was that in the law of return, that Israel has to welcome all Jews, which is part of the constitution of Israel. There's no official constitution, but it's a basic premise of the state of Israel. So the question is, what's a Jew who has to return? Mir Yehudi. That's literally what it means. Who's a Jew? And their answer was someone born Jewish or someone that converted, but it doesn't say converted according to halacha. And that caused the Rebbe incredible amount of grief and untold amount of sichas and Farbrengen. The Rebbe went and spoke about it for hours and hours and hours. Unfortunately, as of today, much of it has not been fixed. But there's no question that every single day that the Mir Yehudi is not fixed is a stain, a huge stain. So let's see what the Rebbe has to say. In continuation to what we spoke about earlier regarding Shechem, that this is a place makom machon lepuranus, and in general, there's never a lack of unpositive things. Is given let's the tag nachinim, but in the recent days there was something else. The Sicha was said on Shabbos Parshas Vayeishev Tavshin Lamed Zayin at the end of 1976. So there it goes like this, and says the same person that writes Goyim as Yidden and Mir Yehudi and says that Mir Yehudi and the law of return doesn't make a big deal. So he now picked up a hand against Shmir Shabbos. There was a vote about Shabbos. And the Rebbe says that there was a status quo. There was an agreement that there will never be Kedusha, the opposite of the sanctity of Shabbos. In other words, Chilul Shabbos in public. And this whole thing that happened, I'm not sure if it was a game or something, it didn't have to happen on Shabbos. And nevertheless, he picked up his hand against Shabbos. And the Indian of Shabbos is not a small diktuk of div. They said it's not a small thing to Rabban, and it's compared to the whole Torah. And even against people in his own party, that they avoided the vote. In other words, they just did abstention. He decided to pick up his hand dafka against Shabbos. And he says that he's speaking in the name of Teiras Moshe and in the name of all 100,000 Jews of his party. And he says he's talking on behalf of all Jews in Eretz Yisrael and Jews in Chutz La'aretz. And this is the miflaga of Dasim, of religious people. And he's protecting Torah mitzvahs by doing this. Now, this is an individual that in his private life is a Frum Yid. He puts on tefillin every day. And probably there's more Jews over there that put on tefillin every day. But still, he picks up his hand against Shabbos. And they take a photo of him and they send it all around the world. And the whole world is talking about this. And the next day he's walking around, I'm feeling good. He says it's just politics. It's not like Torah mitzvahs. His sitting on the chair in the Knesset is pure holiness. It's all politics. And when Miftat does it, and especially that they weren't even talking now, there wasn't up to discussion about him losing his seat or the government collapsing. His picking up the hand made no difference because when he picked up the hand, it was 55 against 48. And if he didn't pick up his hand, it would be 54 votes against 49. So nothing would have happened. The law would have still passed. Why did he do it? So to show that he's an Evet Knani, that even when it's not his benkel, his chair, his Knesset seat's not up to discussion, and you'd think that maybe you'll finally have his own opinion. No, he's an Evet Knani. He has no opinion. and he's totally loyal to the people above him, and he does what they tell him. And this is the same individual that has to do with the idea of Miu Yehudi, and the same individual that has to do with autopsies and with taking Yeshiva Bachrim into the army. Baruch Hashem, at the time it was off discussion, because by him the main thing is the chair. So it doesn't make a difference if you write a guy as a yid, because nevertheless, the whole world will know that he has a signature. And in the year 1966, he's a minister in Israel. A minister in Israel, Eretz Yisrael. Pretty heavy stuff. By Yidbin in Snikkeven came Mitzias as a minister. Once upon a time, there was no such a thing as a minister. There was the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu, Kedech V'Adasai, but a minister that talks in the name of Torah and picks up his hand against Shabbos, we never had something like this. And you could see at least one positive thing about him. The Rebbe says, forgive me for saying it's a bit sarcastic, like Rashi says, that you could learn from the negative, you could learn the positive, that he's not disingenuous. He says what he feels, whatever is on his mind and his heart, he says. Like the Gemara says that it's not the mouse that's the Ganev that stole the piece of bread. No, the hole is the Ganev that made the same. It made the opportunity for the mouse to steal. So the 100,000 Jews of his that voted for his party and stay quiet, and they let him sit on the leadership, and then he comes to the elections with the whole shtudim, because he knows that he has in the pocket the votes. There's good things happening. You're lighting candles and playing dreidel and me'es latkes, minhag Chanukah, and all wonderful things. And minhag Yisrael, tova, you have to know eventually that you have to move and do something. What's the connection to what we spoke about Shechem? Because as the inyan funami flega is a makamuchan leperanis, belonging to a party is problematic, right? Because it's all about power. It literally sets you up for the opposite of blessing. Now you think it's bringing good things for the people, and when you make a decision on behalf of a lot of people, you could bring things. You could accomplish things, but nevertheless, it's a makkah muchal leperagnus. When a miflega is a eretz yecheles yeshver, belonging to a party literally eats people up. You just have to watch Israeli politics for 5 minutes and you'll see it. Das est if the mentioning Ganzen literally eats up the person. He loses his identity, and he's no longer a balabas on himself. B'shas der Manig is wie darf zu sein, kann das meinea sein. Now, if the leader of the party is the way he should be, he'll make sure that things are the way it is. But when the leader is not okay the way he is, then we could see the results. Now, that's saying that all the negative things should be removed, and this weird or problematic law of Miu Yehudi should be removed, and we don't have to talk about these things. And the Mitzvah Hashem from today going forward, only good things will chase all the Yidden, and Hashem will light up the darkness, even in the Gullus. Because the matzav is, the Rebbe says, we're far even from Ischal to the Gula, even from the beginning of Gula, because many people said the state of Israel is the beginning of Gula. The kamos is atatum Mashiach. Quality, in quantity, Mashiach could come any second, but quality, we're no closer to Mashiach. In other words, we haven't taken a step towards there. It's no Ischal to the Gula, because we're standing lower than we were a year ago. And what do we have to do? We can't keep ourselves busy with these things because there's no one to talk about. Now we have to do Torah mitzvahs, and starting with something that's timely, Mivtza Chanukah. And like we said earlier in the Farbrengen, different Farbrengen, that we have to do Midday Chanukah 2 Farbrengens. One Farbrengen B'Lev Hamad Smelach in one place with a Mashpia Adav or a guide, and a second Farbrengen in more places where every person becomes combined and connected. You talk about the ideas of Chanukah, and from those Mivtza Chanukah you have all the other stuff of Chanukah. We'll just finish off what the Rebbe said then. And because the idea of Chanukah is connected with Chinuch, like Dr. Rebbe says, the idea of Chanukah Sabayis, Chanukah Samizbeach, the idea of Chinuch. So therefore, it's the perfect time to talk and to work on the ideas of Chinuch. And when you give kids Chanukah geld and other minhagim of Chanukah, spielen dreidel, was das is a minig from Chanukah and many kilos kedoshas of Yisrael, and minig Yisrael teirahu. whatever the reason of the custom. You see that even the Rebbes gave out Chanukah gelt to their kids, and the Tzedek Rebbe would give his daughters Chanukah gelt even after they got married until the last years. And he knew when he gave them Chanukah gelt, I'm going to make a sturm of it. I'll tell the world. And how much more so you have to give Chanukah gelt to small kids, even very young kids, small in knowledge. In other words, it doesn't necessarily mean young in age. It can mean people who are white-haired. Look at me. And a vice versa, but they don't know anything. And that you do it through the fact that you work on mitzvah chinuch and other mitzvahim, you'll be told the Eibishter will bring his mitzvah gulam mitzvah shlem and Mashiach tzekenu. And then the Rebbe went into the explanation of Rashi, and then the Rebbe went and explained a Zoyar as well, as was the custom in those years of the Sichas.